This is a brief introduction, and uh, and we're gonna cover some important areas about the thermal management using biological storage methods. This is a quite interesting topic and an unusual way of doing a thermal management in a system because it involves both a living and a non-living being coherent together. Now, before we are jumping into the biological storage method, like I want to give a few points to make sure you know what's going on in this process. So, what is biological storage methods? It's basically a bio-based material such as bio-based phase change materials (BPCM) or living biological system to store and release thermal energy. These materials absorb or release heat through phase transition or biological reaction, offering sustainable and often biodegradable alternatives to synthetic media. So it's evident that this is directly being inherited from the natural living beings. So it is possibly the one of the most sustainable way of producing the heat other than we using other methods which involves a lot of resources and energy. Bio-based materials, bio-based PCMs are usually it's more like a biological chemical reaction rather than a thermal and mechanics. So it includes like fatty acid sugars or plant derivative waxes that melt, solidify and absorb and release heat at the moderate temperatures. The, they are used in buildings, heating, cooling, solar system and other HVAC applications. So it's basically a chemical reaction. So when the sugar when it's an exothermic reaction. So when it solidifies, there's an instant heat which is generated through the system, and that heat can be used to regulate to the other body of the system. So these mimics or harness biological modules like enzyme and biomaterials to store chemical energy and convert it to heat when it is required. So the working principle we'll try to simplify as simple as we can. For this, there's gonna be a phase change through latent heat, and this phase change is occurring through this uh, BPCM, and it's a living thing. So when that reaction happens, it solidifies, and the solidification causes a heat generation. Heat is stored as a latent energy when the material melts. So it is when it is in a solid state, it's gonna be fully it's gonna store the heat. But when it melts, it's gonna lose the heat which is stored. So it's more like there is a phase change between a solid and a liquid while while charging and discharging through the system. But this is quite opposite to what we are having in water. In water, it's more like when we are cooling it solidifies. The phase changes in solid, but when we are discharging, it's in liquid. But here, it's quite opposite because it's more like a chemical reaction than a physical change of matter. And other thing is, it's also used as a biomat battery or a bioelectrochemical method. It involves like biochemical reaction that stores in the module bonds, which triggers the stored energy and released as heat, water, or electricity depending on the system design. So if you want to run a turbine with the with the heat generated from the system, you could do it. Or for it's mainly for the heating or cooling purpose, that we can also possibly apply this one. So there are quite application with this innovative design. So principle, this is a possibly one of the most simplest diagram I could find. This is the working principle which viewers could find it useful. This is charging. While charging, it goes to that solidification, and while discharging it melts. While melt it cool down, whilst heating up it solidifies. Here is a statistical data about the growth of these renewable energies. So as we can see, the renewable energy has a significant growth. The green one indicates the renewable energy. In that, there are other growth like wind energy. These are by far in every year, so it's been quite incremental in this renewable energy. In this renewable energy, we specifically see in the diagram B, we can see the biomass and other consumption, the geothermal biomass and other consumption. These are all possibly the most wide used for large applications. So the along with the we know the geothermal energy has been quite effective, one of the effective source of energy. Along with that, this biomass is also being included to be the part of innovative sustainable source of energy. Now let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of this kind of system. And advantages: it's eco-friendly and renewable, and it's efficient, and it's non-toxic and safe to handle, and it's ideal for passive HVAC system. So for low power output applications like households and other small buildings, this would be a really good choice, and potentially lower cost, as this requires more like a chemical reaction and requires less maintenance compared to the actual physical involving something which involving more physical components. And it's turnable phase change points, so it can be easily modified with various according to the various temperature in the surroundings. And the disadvantages: it's the narrow temperature range. It's typically not suited for very high temperature industrial use, and it has the low thermal conductivity. So it has it won't be a spontaneous reaction. The reaction will be quite slow compared to the actual typical uh, thermal, compared to your typical thermal energy storage. And and, and also it's a biological degradation over time, so there isn't anything that's gonna pollute the soil or the ground, and it requires a large amount of volume required. So it requires more raw materials, and it should be used over time. But since it's a biodegradable, it also holds a disadvantage that it's prone to oxidation and degradation. So we can't use it for very long term. So it cannot be used for a long term stable sustainability. This is quite interesting, isn't it? Now we'll have a look at where all it's been applied around the world, and how it's been more sustainable to the environment with the real statistical data. So there's a company, Aquafina Thermal Management and Storage (UTS). So they also applied this one in Netherlands. We know the Netherlands, they are well known for this sustainable development. They are also been using this one by 2018. Even in Sweden, Denmark, Belgium, and even in Turkey, they are using this kind of system. And around 10 to 15% of the multi building of the corporate buildings are being used by this system. And also there is a significant share market for these kind of technologies. So if you are seeing an investor point of view, there is a good scope for these kind of innovation. And it's also been used in Denmark and even in Finland. So mostly it's used in Asian and European countries. So, other than the heating or thermal management system, it's also been used for other applications like they are plant derived microbial materials. So they are bio electrochemical. That's a bioelectrochemical system. So these things stores heat sustainably. So there isn't no any emissions during the loss of heat or any other factors. It's a particularly it's a promising and by far one of the most renewable system, and reducing the for use of fossil fuel reliance, and still other while other countries like Netherlands are already emerged to these new technologies, but new in other countries are also tra- showing keen interest towards this new brand new innovative system. So by 2030, this will be widely used all around the world. And thank you for listening to my this speech, and I thank Professor for giving me an opportunity to explore the topic and know more about it. Thank you once again.